Hello, good morning, happy Sunday. I hope that you all are staying home and staying healthy and staying safe. Today, Pastor Sarah read the scripture from John, and the scripture talked about how there was a young man who was one of the disciples. His name was Thomas. He got a nickname of Doubting Thomas because he was not there when the other disciples saw Jesus come back and proved that Jesus really was alive and he has risen and that he was there again. But Thomas was not there. He was not part of that group that saw it. So when he finally came back to all the disciples told him, "Oh, wow, Jesus has risen. He is back again." Thomas didn't believe him. He doubted everything that they said. He thought that there was no way possible that Jesus could be alive, that he has risen, because he couldn't see it. He didn't believe it. He didn't see it. A lot of times in my life, I can see myself as Doubting Thomas because I think about things and someone tells me something that I don't believe, and I have immediately so many questions that flood my mind. I think, oh my goodness, is this true? Is this not true? Should I believe this? What should I do? So what I personally do is I ask a bunch of questions. The questions for me help me clarify things and make sure that I can figure out for myself if I believe that or if I do not, which is the same way that Doubting Thomas thought about things. He was not able to believe things until he asked a bunch of questions and he was able to physically touch Jesus again. Many times, to help clarify our questions, we also like to use our 5 senses: smelling, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling, hearing, touching, tasting. Smelling, hearing, touching, tasting, seeing. A lot of the times when people have questions, they immediately go to their senses because those are what kick in automatically. The 5 senses: hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing. A lot of people say seeing is believing. In Thomas's case, that is not true. Thomas needs to be able to touch him and make sure that he's real to believe what he's hearing, because he has a bunch of questions because he doesn't believe it. So, I have an example with this little guy. This is Winnie the Pooh. This is one of my favorites. So, ways that I can figure out that Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal here is real is I can touch Winnie the Pooh. He is very soft. He's kind of light. Cannot hear him, which is okay. It would be kind of weird if you could hear him, if your stuffed animals talked. I'm not going to taste him because that would be a little weird too. But I can see him, and for me, if I can see him and if I can touch him, those help answer some of my questions to realize that he is real and that it is there. Okay, for me, I love magic. I love magic. It is one of the most fascinating things to me, how things can appear and then disappear and your mind just tricks you in so many different ways. But then at the end of the show, I always have a lot of questions thinking like, wait, how did they make that work? Have you guys ever seen the trick where they saw someone in half and then she gets put back to one piece? Like, my brain is questioning it, constantly questioning it. And usually they don't get answers, but I still have a ton of questions when I see those things. I think, what happened to her? How did they make this happen? Okay, so I actually have a magic trick right now to show you guys. I hope you guys like pets too, because that is how I'm going to show you my magic trick. Okay, so here I'm covering myself, getting my dog ready for the trick, and then I disappear. Okay, so that is one of my magic tricks. It's a work in progress, but as you can see, my dog, who is the big one, he was confused and then he ran towards it because he had a ton of questions. He asked me all of his questions. He was wondering where I went, what happened to me, like, how did that happen? And if you were in Cooper's position, what would you guys have thought? Like, what questions came to your mind immediately? What I have learned in my time of being alive is that it is always okay to ask questions. Like, even when you're scared to ask questions, like in school, if you don't understand anything, questions always help clarify things. They help you develop as a person and they help you learn things, which is so important. And if you guys have any questions, do not be afraid to write them down. You can ask your parents, you can ask your siblings, you can ask me or Pastor Sarah. Any of us would be willing to try and help you answer your questions with whatever knowledge we have. life throws a lot of things at you. So when you don't believe them, you ask a bunch of questions. So say your mother or your father came downstairs after a long work day and said, "Kids, guess what? I don't want to make dinner, so we're gonna have cookies for dinner." What is your immediate reaction? Are you happy? Are you confused? Are you thrilled? Are you feeling a bunch of things? What do? Do you jump up in excitement and be like, "Yay, I love cookies"? Or do you think that they're playing a joke on you and you ask them questions and say, you think about it for a second, you go, are we really having cookies for dinner? Because your first reaction can be, "Yay, we're having cookies for dinner." But once you think about it a little bit more, you start to have more questions and you want answers for them. So what do you think those questions would be? What do you think if they came downstairs and said, "It's cookies for dinner"? What would you say? What questions come to your mind? Asking questions is how we learn and grow as people. Never asking questions will lead you to always being confused or wondering things, and I know for a fact that you do not learn as much. So never be afraid to ask questions. It is always okay to ask questions. If someone doesn't have the answer, then you can search for the answer together. You can learn about different things when you ask questions. Thomas was a questioner. He questioned his disciples and he even questioned Jesus. It came to the part where he finally met Jesus himself again. And he asked if he was real to start with. And Jesus said, "Yes, I am real. I have risen." But that was not enough for Thomas. Thomas had to physically touch him to make sure that he was alive and that he wasn't just dreaming or it wasn't just a hallucination. And through his questions and through his senses, he learned that Jesus really was real. And then it was his turn to think about it and think, do I believe this or do I not believe this? Because you always have a choice. And through Thomas asking several questions, he did learn and he did decide to believe. And the questions helped him decide if he believed or not. So that is all I have for this Sunday. I'm sorry it's not an arts and craft. I will work on one for next week, but I hope that you guys remember to never be afraid to ask questions. And if you have any questions, write them down. You can ask your parents, you can send them to Pastor Sarah or to me, and we will try our best to answer them. And I hope you all stay safe, and I will see you next Sunday.